Okay, so I'm making videos about my spiritual awakening and all the wild things that have happened to me ever since. And so, my last video, I shared about why I left Christianity when I was 13 to being an atheist basically for the rest of my life, up until a couple of years ago when I heard the big booming voice of God. So, this is that story. So, it was a couple of years ago. I'm kind of sad. I'm very like depressed. I'm just like in this like really bad negative energy state. And what I realize about that now is that I don't really think I was so depressed as I was just somebody who had let life kind of beat her. Like I just kind of got to this place where like I was, just kind of like a downer. Like I was just like not a fun person to be around. And I was just like in this like my own sad energy for so long that like to the point where my friends didn't even invite me out anymore. I stopped going to so many things that people don't even invite you anymore. And so here's what happened. I'm sitting, I don't know, on the floor of my apartment or in the dark in my apartment. And I'm scrolling through this boy's Instagram, and this is the funny part. So I kind of had fallen in love with this boy on Instagram, which whatever, you can skip past that part. But what I realized about him was as I was scrolling through his Instagram is not just that he was like a cute boy, because he was, but it was also mostly the fact that you could tell he was such a sweet, nice guy. And what I realized about myself was that I was not a match to him. Not because he was like too cute or anything for me, but because he was such a sweet, nice guy. Like you could tell he had a good soul. You could tell he was, you know what I mean? Like a nice, sweet, like high vibing guy. And I was no longer a match to a boy like that because, or anybody frankly like that, because I had just let myself go so far down into this dark place. And so I remember I was scrolling through his Instagram and I asked myself the question, again, here alone in the dark, asked myself the question, like, man, why can't I have this? And this big booming voice, like out of nowhere, like boom, both through me and from outside of me said, no one said you couldn't. Just like that. And it boomed both like from inside of me to outside, and it was so loud that I remember I shot up and I started looking everywhere. I was like, who the F said that? And I start looking everywhere. And then as I kind of come back, I'm like, I realized that I didn't say that out loud. I said it in here. So who said that to me? And the moment I have that realization, I can't explain it, but all of a sudden I get filled up with I just feel all the rancor, all the resentment, all the anger, all the sadness that I had allowed myself to feel for so long. And it all just starts kind of like bubbling up to the surface, and it comes up to here. And I even feel the years gone by. Like I let myself be that way for so long that there's so many like missed years. They're just years gone, stripped away from me from being like that for so long. And I remember it all bubbled up to the surface. And I just let it go. I let it all go. And then almost instantly, I'm filled up with so much love. Like all the love of the universe fills me up, and I can't explain it, but it's like I'm filled with love. And I'd forgotten that there was so much love available to me now. Like that there's so much love here, and it's God's love, and it's creation, and it's everything. It's all here for me now, and I don't have to live like that. Like that's just been a choice to live like that. And all this time, all the while, it was here for me, and I just let it slip by. And I remember like feeling all of that, and I remember just sobbing and sobbing and sobbing, like just like love. I can't explain it, but just like all this love, I just like was filled up in me. And I don't even remember what happened after. I think I just like went to bed crying, like sobbing. But I remember when I woke up in the morning, this is like right at the end of spring and the beginning of summer, where I had left my window open a crack, and I could hear in the morning the birds chirping. And I remember feeling like they were singing just for me. Like all of that song was just for me. And you know when you're like in love with someone and you just feel like everything's for you, you can just, the birds and the butterflies and everything, you just feel like it's all for you. That's how I felt. And I lived a summer of euphoria. Like I call it my summer of euphoria because I was filled up with so much like fun and joy. And I remember I just wanted pleasure. Like I just, anything that was pleasurable, I did. Anywhere if people invited me, I went. Like I just had the most fun summer. But before that happened, what's interesting is that the voice of your intuition, the voice of your guides, they kept saying to me, there were some relationships that needed to get cut off, right? And it was the one with my sister that for sure had to go first because it was the most toxic. And the voice, the thing they kept saying to me was, cut this off now, because if you don't cut it off, it will never get better. And if you never see her again for the rest of your life, then it's better than living like this. Over and over and over, it kept repeating to me and repeating to me until I finally did it, like 2 or 3 weeks later. It was nonstop in my head, nonstop. And so when I finally did it, I remember it was so hard to do because the thing is we had this really incredibly like violent and aggressive relationship, like really, really bad. And I'm gonna be the first to say, like, I'm not violent or aggressive, like that's not my nature. And so when you are confronted with somebody who's so violent and aggressive every single day of your life, it's awful to live like that. It's brutal. And it takes two to tango for sure. Like, I judged her, I invalidated her all the time. I mean, because you have to fight back with something, and any chance, any opportunity I had to make her feel small, I took it. Every single chance I ever had. I never took the high road. I always only ever took the low road with her. And it was such an awful relationship. And what's crazy about that is that, the moment I cut her off, I felt so much relief and release that literally all the excess weight that I had been carrying on my body just melted off. It just melted away to the point where people were like, girl, what are you doing? Like, what's the diet? Like, which gym are you at? Are you juicing? Like, it was one of those things where like, it just melted off. And I hadn't put 2 and 2 together at that time. But what I realize now is that, things like that, like excess weight or disease even, are not just the result of like bad habits or bad eating habits. It's literally trauma stuck in the body. And when you are in survival mode every single day of your life because somebody is screaming at you to your face like that 2-3 times a day and the only reason it doesn't happen is because you haven't spoken to that day, is so brutal. You're just in this survival mode that we're not meant to live like that. Like, it's not good, it's not healthy. And when it just melted off, it was crazy. And I was like, I didn't even know. I was like, I don't know. And I kept drinking and smoking and like living my life the way I was living it. And it had no impact. It was literally falling off. I felt better than I have had in so long. And it was that release of letting her go. And I remember, anybody I told, like, I'm not talking to my sister, whatever, people were like, finally. Everybody said to me, oh my God, girl, it's about time. Like, I can't believe that took you so long. Like, it took you long enough, eh? Like, you really like to suffer. And it's so funny because, after like living like that for so long, like, you don't even realize what you're in. You're just in it, right? It's like the same thing as before, being in that depressive state. You're just in it. And so, I think maybe that's the message, is like, maybe if you're in a situation where you're stuck in something with somebody that is not serving you and it's not serving them, cut it off and let it go, because it liberates you. That's what I realized. It was liberation. And I really thought, like, I'll never see her again for the rest of my life. Like, I'm good. And the truth is like, finally, I'm not going to pretend that we're best friends or anything, because, we're not, but we're finally in this place of like, at least having like mutual respect for each other, where we call each other up, 2-3 times a month, and we have a little chat. And, sometimes it's awkward, and that's okay. But the other thing about that is I truly believe in a future in which me and my sister are best friends. And I know how that sounds. And I'm sure there's other people, even my sister, if she were to hear this, she'd be like, okay, like, relax with that. But I would rather believe in that future than any other alternative. And the truth is if it were to ever return to being, another, like, a disrespectful relationship again, I have no problem leaving. Like, you have to walk away from things that don't serve you and don't serve others. And so I really do feel like, I don't know, maybe that's just the message here, is if you are like, wrapped up in something, in a relationship that is violent, aggressive, or maybe you're the aggressor in the relationship, cut it off, because you don't just liberate yourself, you liberate the person who's in that with you, and you also liberate all the people around you who are caught up and stuck in that drama. So just do it, because what did it say? Cut it off, because if you don't cut it off, it will never get better. And if you never see them again, it'll be better than living the way that you're living.